The late afternoon sun burned orange across the city skyline, painting the cracked sidewalks in gold. A soft breeze carried the smell of roasted peanuts from a street vendor nearby, but under the shadow of a broken billboard sat a little girl in a wheelchair. Her dress was faded, her hair tangled with dust, and her eyes shimmered with silent hunger. She wasn't begging loudly. She just held a crumpled paper cup and whispered, "Please, a snack, just one." Each word trembled through her lips like a fragile plea against the noise of the rushing world. Cars drove by. People stared, then looked away. At the corner, a sleek black car slowed down. Inside, behind tinted glass, sat a man in a suit worth more than the street itself. His name was Ethan Cole, one of the city's youngest billionaires. A man who could buy a meal for every hungry child in the city and still not feel it. But in that single moment, something in the way she wiped her tears stopped him cold. He lowered the window. "Hey, are you okay?" His voice broke through the hum of the city. The girl looked up, startled, her tiny fingers clutching the paper cup. I'm just hungry, sir. I didn't eat since yesterday." The billionaire's eyes softened. He'd heard pleas before, countless ones. But this felt different. Maybe it was her trembling voice. Maybe it was how her wheelchair looked like it hadn't moved in days. "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." Ethan parked his car on the side, ignoring the curious glances from pedestrians. He knelt beside her, his polished shoes inches from the dusty pavement. "What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered. "I just wanted a snack. I like chocolate biscuits." But the shopkeeper said no money, no food. Her words cracked something open in him, something he hadn't felt in years. He remembered a night long ago, before the wealth, when he was a hungry boy standing in a rain-soaked alley, praying for someone to notice him. He reached into his pocket, but instead of handing her money, he smiled gently. "Come with me. We'll get you something better than biscuits." Her eyes widened. I can't. My wheelchair's broken." Ethan didn't hesitate. He placed his briefcase on the sidewalk and began tightening the loose wool bolts with the precision of a man who once fixed his own bike with kitchen spoons. It wasn't perfect, but it rolled again. When he finally pushed her toward his car, a few bystanders whispered, "What's that rich guy doing?" One muttered. Ethan ignored them. The car doors opened with a soft click, and for the first time in months, Lily smiled, a small, uncertain smile, but real. As they drove, she pressed her face against the glass, watching tall buildings blur by. "Are you really rich?" she asked shyly. Ethan chuckled. "Some people say that. But I think real wealth is being able to help someone without expecting anything back." Her small laugh filled the silence. "Then you're the richest person I ever met." The words hit him harder than he expected. For a moment, he didn't see skyscrapers or profits, just the reflection of her fragile hope in the car window. They stopped at a cafe with warm lights spilling onto the street. Ethan helped her inside and ordered everything she looked at twice: muffins, fries, and chocolate milkshakes. As she ate, tears rolled down her cheeks. "No one ever treated me like this before," she said softly. "If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters." Ethan leaned forward. "Where are your parents, Lily?" Her chewing slowed. "My mom. She's in the hospital. I visit her every day after school. But now," her voice trembled, "I can't go anymore. The wheelchair broke, and the bus driver said he won't wait for me." Ethan's heart clenched. "She's in the hospital? Which one?" "St. Grace," she whispered. He nodded. "Then that's where we're going next." Lily blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. "But you don't even know me." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes strangers care more than the ones we know." She stared at him, at the way his eyes carried both strength and sadness. And for the first time that day, she believed something good might actually happen. Outside, the rain began to fall lightly, streaking the car windows with silver lines as they drove toward the hospital. Two souls from completely different worlds, unknowingly about to change each other's lives forever. The hospital loomed in the distance, its white walls glowing faintly under the drizzle. By the time Ethan and Lily reached the entrance, the rain had turned heavier, drumming against the car roof like a quiet warning. Ethan pulled out an umbrella, stepped out first, then lifted Lily gently from the car seat into her chair. The wheels squeaked with every turn as they rolled through puddles toward the main doors. Inside, the sterile air smelled of disinfectant and exhaustion. People hurried past with files and clipboards. No one seemed to notice the billionaire pushing a rusty wheelchair with a soaked little girl in it. He didn't care. For the first time in years, his meetings, deadlines, and investments didn't matter. Only this small moment did. At the reception desk, Lily whispered, "Room 212. That's my mom." Ethan nodded, guiding her through the long corridor lined with faded posters about hope and healing. Each flicker of the fluorescent light made the walls look older, tired, like the people inside them. When they reached the room, Lily's voice broke. "Mom!" A frail woman turned her head from the bed. Her skin was pale, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights, but the moment she saw her daughter, her lips trembled into a smile. "Lily!" Lily rolled closer, holding her mother's hand. "Mom, I brought someone. He helped me." Ethan stayed near the door, awkward yet humble. "Hi, I'm Ethan." The woman's eyes widened with disbelief. She knew his face. He'd been on TV once, speaking about business success and resilience. You're Mr. Cole, aren't you?" He nodded slightly. "Please, just Ethan today." Her weak laugh cracked the tension. "What's a man like you doing helping my little girl?" He shrugged gently. "Maybe I needed the reminder that I'm still human." Lily's mom coughed softly, then said, "Thank you. She's been through a lot since the accident." That word lingered in the air, accident. Ethan looked down, waiting for Lily to continue. She hesitated, eyes darting to the floor. "It happened last year. A car hit us while we were crossing the street. I was okay at first, but then my legs stopped working. Mom lost her job trying to take care of me." Ethan's heart sank. He could almost feel the echo of tires screeching, glass shattering, and in that silence, the memory of his own childhood returned. The alley, the hunger, the years of clawing his way out of poverty. He saw his younger self in her eyes, not broken, just unseen. "Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think." Ethan stepped closer. "How's the treatment going?" Lily's mom looked away. "They said she might walk again with surgery, but it's expensive. I couldn't even pay for the scans." He felt that familiar ache of guilt. Money, the one thing he had too much of, suddenly felt useless if it couldn't heal this pain right away. Lily reached for her mother's hand again. "It's okay, Mom. I don't need to walk. As long as I have you." Her innocence stabbed at Ethan's chest. He turned to the window, the rain still tapping gently against it, and whispered, "Maybe you deserve more than okay." He stepped out of the room to make a call. His voice lowered, calm but firm. "Yes, Dr. Patel. St. Grace Hospital. Room 212. I want you to review her case personally. Tonight." The receptionist looked confused when he returned moments later with a soft smile. "Everything's going to be fine, Mrs. Williams," he said quietly. The woman frowned. "What did you do?" Ethan crouched beside Lily's chair. "I just called a friend who happens to be one of the best surgeons in the city. He owes me a favor." Lily blinked rapidly, confused. "But why? You don't even know us." He smiled. "Sometimes you don't need to know someone to care." Hours passed. The rain outside softened into mist. Lily fell asleep against her mother's arm, crumbs from her snacks still on her fingers. Ethan stayed by the door, watching them breathe, fragile, steady, together. He thought about all the times he'd walked past people like her, the ones whose eyes asked for help without words. How many had he ignored? How many had needed just one small act of kindness to change everything? When dawn began to rise, painting the sky in streaks of rose and blue, the doctor arrived. He greeted Ethan respectfully, then turned to Lily's mother with a reassuring nod. "We'll do everything we can." Lily stirred awake. "Is he going to fix me?" The doctor smiled kindly. "We'll try our best, sweetheart." Ethan placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "You're going to be brave, okay?" She nodded, tears shimmering in her wide eyes. "Will you be here when I wake up?" He hesitated. Business meetings, board calls, contracts, but none of it mattered now. "Yes," he whispered. "I'll be right here." That night, as they wheeled her into surgery, Ethan sat beside her mother in the hallway. Every beep from the operating room felt like a heartbeat suspended between guilt and hope. When the red light finally turned green, and the doctor emerged with a smile, Ethan exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. The door to the recovery room opened with a soft creak, letting in a sliver of morning light. Lily lay there, small and pale, her leg wrapped in bandages but her breathing steady. Her mother sat beside her, holding her tiny hand as if it were made of glass. Ethan stood a few feet away, quietly observing, the billionaire who once ruled boardrooms now waiting like a parent outside a classroom. When Lily's eyes fluttered open, her gaze went straight to him. You stayed," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Told you I would." Her mother's voice cracked as she spoke. "The doctor said, there's hope. If her body responds well, she could walk again within a year." Tears pooled in her eyes, the kind that come only after months of silent endurance. Ethan nodded softly. "That's good news. The best kind." He looked out the window, watching the sunlight paint gold streaks across the hospital floor. It reminded him of his own mother, a woman who used to hold his hand through every storm, who told him that kindness wasn't a choice, but a duty. He'd lost her too early, and somewhere between his first million and his first mansion, he'd buried that part of himself deep. Now, this girl, this fragile, fearless child, had somehow unearthed it again. A nurse walked in, smiling. "She'll need therapy sessions and care. It's going to be a long journey." Ethan turned to her calmly. "Whatever she needs, she'll get. No limits." The nurse blinked, unsure she'd heard right. Lily's mother gasped. "Mr. Cole, we can't." He stopped her gently. "You don't owe me anything. Just promise me one thing. When she walks again, you'll both pay it forward somehow." Her lip trembled. "We will. I swear we will." Ethan nodded, feeling something shift inside him, a warmth he hadn't felt since before success made him cold. As he left the room for a moment, he wandered the hallway where other patients rested. He saw faces, old, young, broken, hopeful, all carrying invisible weights. That's when an idea began forming in his mind. He found a quiet bench by the hospital garden and sat there, listening to the laughter of nurses and the hum of life returning. Maybe it wasn't enough to just help one person. Maybe he could do more, build something lasting. Just then, a small voice startled him. "Mr. Ethan." It was Lily, awake again, her wheelchair pushed by a nurse. Her hair was tied back neatly, and there was a band of sunlight across her face. "Hey, superstar," he said softly. "You're supposed to be resting." "I wanted to see the garden," she said, looking around. "It smells nice here." He chuckled. "It does." She turned her eyes up at him. "Why are you being so nice to me?" He hesitated, searching for words that didn't sound like charity. "Because once, when I was about your age, someone did the same for me. A stranger gave me food when I was starving. I never forgot it. Maybe now, it's my turn." She smiled. "So kindness travels like a circle." "Exactly." "Then I'll do that too one day," she said proudly. "When I can walk again, I'll help someone who's sitting alone, like I was." Her words hit him harder than any business deal ever could. He smiled, but his voice cracked when he said, "You already helped someone, Lily. You helped me remember who I was." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" He just shook his head and smiled. One day you'll understand. They sat in silence for a while, birds fluttering around the garden's fountain, the air smelling faintly of jasmine. Finally, he said softly, now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. As hours passed, Ethan met with the hospital director, arranging a new charity fund under Lily's name, the Lily Hope Foundation, aimed at helping children in wheelchairs regain their strength. When he told Lily's mother, she could barely speak. You're naming it after her. She's the reason it exists, Ethan said simply. She reminded me that wealth without heart is just noise. News of his quiet act began to spread through whispers in the hospital. Some thought it was just a publicity stunt. Others knew better. They saw the look in his eyes, the same look of a man trying to make peace with his past. Later that evening, Ethan returned to Lily's room one last time. The lights were dim, the beeping soft and rhythmic. She was half asleep, her little hand resting on her chest. He placed a small stuffed bear on the table beside her. For when you wake up, he whispered. Then he turned to her mother. Take care of her. And when she walks, make sure she runs toward her dreams, not away from her pain. Her mother nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. We'll never forget you, Mr. Cole. He smiled faintly. Don't remember me. Remember what this moment meant. And with that, Ethan walked out, not as a billionaire, but as a man who'd finally learned that giving didn't make you smaller, it made you whole. Outside, the city lights flickered alive again, and somewhere in that glowing distance, a quiet resolve began to grow, one that would soon turn into something far greater than he ever planned. Weeks drifted by like soft ripples after rain. The hospital became quieter, lighter. Lily's laughter began echoing faintly through the corridors during her therapy sessions. Small, hesitant laughs that carried more strength than they used to. Ethan visited almost every day, bringing books, puzzles, or simply sitting by the window while she told him stories about the clouds that looked like animals. Her mother had begun to walk differently too, not physically, but in her posture, her hope. The darkness that once clung to her face had started to melt away, replaced by something brighter, steadier. Ethan, however, carried a storm inside him. Every visit healed something unseen but also awakened something he couldn't silence: guilt. He'd built his empire on the foundation of profit and silence, on saying no more times than he ever said yes. Yet, with every smile Lily gave him, that empire felt smaller. One afternoon, as he walked into the hospital garden, his assistant approached him, holding a tablet. Sir, the investors are asking about your absence. They're worried about the delays. Ethan didn't even look up. Tell them I'm busy investing in something better. Sir. He finally looked at her. In people. The assistant blinked, unsure how to respond. Ethan turned back toward the garden, where Lily was struggling to stand during her therapy. Her hands trembled on the parallel bars, her face tightening with effort. He could feel every second of that struggle deep in his chest. Come on, sweetheart, her therapist encouraged softly. One more try. Lily gritted her teeth, her legs wobbling beneath her. For a brief moment, she lifted herself, maybe just an inch, but in that small movement, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Her mother gasped. Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't clap or cheer, he just whispered under his breath, "That's it. You're stronger than you think." When she finally sat back down, panting, she looked up and smiled faintly. Did you see that? He nodded. I did. And I'm proud. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat by his penthouse window overlooking the glittering city, the skyline glowing like 1,000 tiny promises. Yet, all he could see was Lily, her shaking legs, her quiet strength. He thought about his father, a man who had abandoned him and his mother when money ran out. The thought carved an old wound open again. He had vowed to never be weak, to never care too deeply. But maybe caring wasn't weakness. Maybe it was returning to what mattered. A few days later, the hospital organized a small gathering for patients supported by Ethan's foundation. There were flowers, soft music, and a humble banner that read, "Hope heals faster together." Lily sat in the front row, wearing a pink dress Ethan's assistant had bought her. When she saw him arrive, her face lit up like a lantern. "Mr. Ethan," she called. He crouched down beside her, smiling. "How's my little fighter today?" "I stood for 4 seconds today," she said proudly, raising 4 fingers. He laughed, eyes softening. 4 seconds today. Maybe 5 tomorrow. As speeches began, the hospital director announced the official launch of the Lily Hope Foundation. Ethan was invited to say a few words. He took the microphone, scanning the faces in front of him. Doctors, patients, strangers, and one little girl who had unknowingly rewritten his definition of success. "I used to think money could fix anything," he began slowly. "But I was wrong. It can't buy love, can't buy time, can't buy peace. It can only amplify what's already inside you, greed or generosity." He paused, glancing at Lily. "That little girl over there reminded me of something my mother used to say. If you ever forget what it means to be human, look into the eyes of someone who needs help, and don't look away." The audience was silent. A nurse wiped her tears quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. "So today, I don't want applause. I want a promise, from all of us, to notice the ones we usually overlook. The next time you see someone struggling, don't walk past them, because you might be the miracle they've been waiting for." When the applause finally came, it wasn't loud. It was gentle, sincere, like gratitude itself. As Ethan stepped down, Lily reached out her hand to him. "That was beautiful," she said. He squeezed her tiny fingers softly. "You're the reason I said it." She grinned. "Then we both made something beautiful." He nodded. "Yes, we did." If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. Later, as dusk fell, Ethan walked alone through the hospital corridors. Each step echoed softly, not as a man escaping guilt anymore, but as someone walking toward peace. Yet deep inside, he sensed something unresolved, a part of Lily's story he didn't know yet, one that would soon test everything he thought he understood about kindness and redemption. The night after the ceremony, Ethan sat in his car outside the hospital far longer than he intended. The streetlights flickered across the windshield, slicing his reflection into fragments. The polished billionaire, the lost son, and the man who'd finally started to feel again. But something in Lily's mother's eyes during the event had unsettled him. A hesitation, a flicker of fear she'd tried to hide. He didn't know why, but he sensed there was more to their story. He went back inside. The hospital was quieter now, corridors dimly lit, the air heavy with the scent of antiseptic. When he reached Lily's room, her mother was alone, sitting by the window. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly. She startled, then smiled faintly. "No. Old habits. Worrying doesn't rest easy." He took the chair beside her. "You've done a lot for her. She's lucky." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "She's my whole world. But there's something I never told you." Ethan's brows furrowed. "What is it?" She hesitated, clutching the edge of her shawl. "The car accident that hurt Lily. The one that broke her legs." Her voice trembled. "It wasn't just any car. It belonged to your company." The words fell like stones. Ethan froze. "What?" She nodded slowly, tears spilling now. "One of your delivery drivers was speeding that night. He lost control, hit us at the crossing. The police said it was an accident, and your lawyers handled everything quietly. We were given a small settlement, but it wasn't enough. I tried to fight back, but how could I stand against a billionaire?" The air thickened between them. Ethan felt his pulse thunder in his ears. He remembered vaguely, the news, the reports, a case from a year ago. His team had handled it. He'd signed off without reading the full details. And now, sitting before him, was the very child whose pain he'd indirectly caused. He stood abruptly, pacing toward the door. I didn't know. I swear I didn't." She wiped her face. "I believe you, but it doesn't change what happened." He turned back, his chest heavy with guilt. No, it doesn't. But maybe I can make it right. Her eyes softened. You already have, Ethan. You gave my daughter her chance back. Maybe that's the miracle we needed. He sat again, voice shaking. If I'd known, She cut him off gently. Would you have cared then, the way you do now? That question pierced deeper than blame ever could. He didn't answer. He couldn't. At that moment, the door creaked, and Lily stirred awake. Her small, sleepy voice broke the silence. Mr. Ethan. He quickly wiped his eyes. Hey, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. She smiled faintly. You sound sad. He forced a smile. Just thinking too much. She reached out a tiny hand toward him. Then don't think sad things. Think happy ones, like how I stood for 4 seconds today. He chuckled through a broken breath. I will, Lily. I promise. When she drifted back to sleep, Ethan whispered to her mother, she can never know. She doesn't need that pain. Her mother nodded. I agree. She deserves peace, not more truth. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. The next morning, Ethan returned to his office for the first time in weeks. His staff was startled by his quiet demeanor. The walls that once echoed with ambition now felt cold, hollow. He called a meeting. I want to review every case our legal department ever settled under my name. Every one, he said firmly. His team exchanged worried looks. Sir, that's thousands of files. Then start now. He spent hours reading names, numbers, incidents, human lives reduced to paperwork. Each file felt like a confession. Late in the evening, he leaned back in his chair, exhausted. The skyline outside blinked with distant lights, indifferent to his turmoil. Then his phone buzzed, a message from Lily's mother. She walked 2 steps today. Without the bars. He stared at the screen for a long time. 2 steps, small, fragile, impossible steps that somehow carried all the forgiveness he didn't think he deserved. That night, Ethan drove back to the hospital with a single envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a check, not for charity, but for truth. He left it at the reception with a note that read, for the pain my hands once ignored. For the hope your hearts rebuilt. Thank you for teaching me what it means to see. He didn't sign it. He didn't need to. Outside, he stood beneath the soft drizzle, looking up at the glowing hospital windows. For the first time, he didn't feel like a savior or a sinner, just a man trying to make things right, one quiet act at a time. The days that followed felt quieter, softer, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Ethan still visited the hospital, but his visits were humbler now. He no longer arrived in suits or polished cars. Sometimes he just came in a hoodie and carried coffee for Lily's mother. He didn't want to be the billionaire who saved them anymore. He wanted to be the man who stayed. Lily's recovery was slow but miraculous. Her legs trembled, faltered, and yet every day she pushed forward. The therapists often whispered how they had never seen such determination in a child. And whenever she stumbled, Ethan was there, standing quietly behind her, ready to catch her if she fell. Again, he'd ask with a small grin. Again, she'd say, jaw set with fire. One evening, she looked at him during a therapy break and said softly, Mr. Ethan, I know you're sad sometimes, even when you smile. He froze. You think so? She nodded, sipping her juice. You look like you lost something important. He lowered his eyes. Maybe I did. Or maybe I'm just trying to find the parts of me I forgot. She tilted her head. Then you'll find them. You help people, so good things will find you too. It was such a simple sentence, spoken like a truth from a child who saw beyond his wealth and guilt. For Ethan, it landed deeper than any therapy session ever could. Over the next few weeks, Ethan made decisions that shocked his corporate board. He redirected a portion of his company's annual profits into medical aid and rehabilitation funds. He opened community centers named not after himself, but after people whose lives had inspired him, including the Lily Hope Children's Wing at St. Grace Hospital. When the press tried to turn it into a spectacle, Ethan refused interviews. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about her, and everyone like her who still believes kindness can heal." He began visiting other hospitals too, always quietly, never as a billionaire but as a listener. He'd sit with patients, hear their stories, leave behind a note or a word of comfort instead of a donation slip. One rainy afternoon, as he and Lily watched the raindrops race down the hospital window, she whispered, "You know what I prayed for that night I met you?" He smiled. "Chocolate biscuits." She giggled. "No, I prayed for someone to notice me, not just because I was sad, but because they cared." He turned to her, his voice low. "And I'm the one who got that prayer." She nodded, then said with innocent certainty, "Maybe it was you who needed it more than me." The words made him look away, eyes burning. She was right. She had saved him too, not from poverty, but from emptiness. "Do you ever miss your mom?" she asked after a pause. He nodded slowly. "Every day. She used to tell me something I never understood until now. That real strength isn't in building walls, it's in breaking them to let love in." Lily smiled. "Then you must be the strongest person ever." He chuckled softly. "Not yet. But maybe I'm learning." The rain eased, replaced by a glowing sunset that flooded the room with warm orange light. It felt like the world was giving them a small blessing, a sign that pain, once faced, could finally soften. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. As the months turned, Lily's therapy ended with a small celebration. Balloons hung from the ceiling, and a crowd gathered in the hospital hallway to watch. "Ready?" her therapist asked. Lily took a deep breath, gripping the rail. Ethan stood at the end of the path, his smile trembling. "Come on, Lily," he said gently. "One step at a time." Her feet moved, shaky, uncertain, but they moved. One, then another. The crowd gasped softly, clapping as she reached him and threw her arms around his waist. "I told you I'd walk again," she whispered into his chest. He swallowed hard. "Yes, you did." Her mother wiped her tears nearby, whispering to herself, "Thank you, God." Ethan looked around, realizing he wasn't just witnessing a miracle. He was part of it. The kind that didn't come from money or power, but from faith and forgiveness. That night, as he drove home under a sky full of stars, he realized something simple but profound. Sometimes, healing doesn't mean erasing pain. It means learning to live beautifully with the scars. And somewhere in his heart, the storm that had raged for years finally began to quiet. Months passed, and the seasons changed gently around the rhythm of their lives. St. Grace Hospital's garden was now filled with laughter. Children playing, parents smiling, volunteers helping wheelchairs across paths once too muddy to cross. In the center of it all stood Lily, no longer confined to her chair, her legs a little stronger each day. She ran, not fast, not flawlessly, but with a determination that made every step look like a victory march. Her mother cheered softly from a nearby bench, and Ethan stood beside her, hands tucked in his coat pockets, a quiet smile tracing his lips. "She doesn't even look back anymore," her mother said. "She trusts that we'll be here." Ethan nodded, his eyes following Lily as she twirled near the fountain. That's how healing works. You stop looking back when you finally believe the ground beneath you won't break again. The woman's gaze softened. "You gave her that ground, Ethan." He shook his head. "No, she gave it to me." Lily ran up, breathless and glowing. "Guess what?" she said. "The nurse said I can go to school again." Ethan smiled. "That's wonderful news, Lily. You'll make a lot of new friends." Her excitement dimmed for a moment. "What if they ask about my legs?" He crouched to meet her eyes. "Then tell them you learned to walk twice, once with your feet and once with your heart." She giggled. "That sounds like something from a movie." He winked. "Maybe it is." As the afternoon light faded, a soft melancholy settled between them. The hospital that had once been their world was becoming just a chapter, And endings, even good ones, hurt a little. Ethan knew he couldn't stay in their lives forever. They needed to grow beyond his presence. But letting go was harder than he expected. That night, he sat in his car outside the hospital again, staring at the glowing windows. His phone buzzed, a message from his board reminding him about a new international expansion project. The old version of him would have smiled proudly. Now, it just felt hollow. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Maybe it was time to balance the scales for good, to step back from the empire that had once consumed him and focus on something that gave life instead of draining it. A week later, news outlets buzzed with headlines. Ethan Cole resigns as CEO, announces new global initiative for child rehabilitation. The article explained how he had transferred a portion of his company's profits into the Lily Hope Foundation worldwide, turning it into a movement rather than a memory. Reporters called him the billionaire with a heart. But Ethan didn't read the articles. He was too busy helping paint the walls of a new children's center in another city. One evening, while he worked, his phone rang. It was Lily. Her voice was brighter than sunlight. "Mr. Ethan, guess what? I walked all the way across the playground today. No help." He laughed. "That's amazing, Lily. I'm proud of you. Mom said we might move to a new house soon, somewhere near my school. She said life is finally good again." "That's wonderful," he said softly. There was a small pause. "Will I still see you?" He looked at the half-painted wall, the brush trembling slightly in his hand. "Always, Lily. Maybe not every day, but always." She hesitated, then whispered, "You're my miracle, Mr. Ethan." His throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. You're mine." The call ended, but her voice lingered in his chest like a song that refused to fade. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Ethan received a small envelope. Inside was a photograph, Lily, standing tall at her school gate, holding a handmade sign that read, "Thank you for teaching me to walk again, and to never stop trying." Below it was a smaller note in her handwriting, "Someday, I'll help someone like you helped me." Ethan stared at it for a long while. Then he smiled through tears. Maybe this was how redemption worked, not in grand gestures or apologies, but in quiet cycles of kindness that continued long after you were gone. He placed the photo on his desk, next to a single candle. The flame flickered gently, its light dancing across his face as he whispered, "You did it, Lily. You changed the world, one step at a time." Outside, the world went on, busy, loud, unknowing. But somewhere in its heartbeat was the echo of a little girl's laughter and the memory of a man who finally found peace in the simplest truth. Miracles don't come from money, they come from love. Spring crept into the city quietly that year. The trees along St. Grace Avenue shimmered with new leaves, and the air smelled of fresh beginnings. The hospital garden, once a place of pain and healing, now bloomed with life. Children chased one another between the benches, and laughter rose where tears once fell. Ethan walked through those paths again, not as a benefactor this time, but as a visitor, almost invisible among the happy noise. His foundation had grown far beyond what he imagined. Volunteers were everywhere, young people with soft voices, guiding, helping, smiling. He watched them for a while, a faint contentment on his face. Near the fountain, he spotted Lily and her mother. They were planting small flowers in the soil around a stone plaque that read, "The Lily Hope Foundation, because every step deserves a chance." Lily saw him first. She waved, grinning, "Mr. Ethan." He crouched down beside her. "You've grown taller, haven't you?" She stood proudly, almost as tall as kindness. He chuckled softly. "That's the best height anyone can reach." Her mother smiled warmly. "You came just in time." She insisted on planting the first flowers herself. Ethan looked at the little garden patch. "They'll bloom beautifully. You know why?" Lily shook her head. Because they're planted by someone who believed in miracles. Lily smiled, brushing dirt from her palms. Do you think everyone gets a miracle? He thought for a moment. Maybe not the one they expect. But yes, everyone gets one. Sometimes, it's a person. Sometimes, it's a moment. Sometimes, it's just hope refusing to die. She nodded, her eyes shining with a kind of wisdom too big for her age. Then you were mine. He swallowed the lump in his throat, blinking back tears. And you were mine, Lily. They sat together for a while in peaceful silence, watching petals flutter in the breeze. Birds sang in the distance. The world felt healed. When it was time for him to leave, Lily ran after him, steady, strong. Wait, she called. She handed him a small folded paper. He opened it carefully. Inside was a drawing, a stick figure of a man pushing a girl in a wheelchair, with the words written in bright crayon. Kindness is the only thing that makes us rich. He couldn't speak for a few seconds. His voice trembled when he finally said, "You're right." He knelt and hugged her tightly. Keep that truth safe, Lily. It's worth more than anything I ever owned. She nodded. I promise. He looked at her one last time before turning toward the gate, the sunlight casting long, gentle shadows across the garden. That evening, as he stood on his balcony overlooking the city, Ethan realized how much quieter his heart had become. The guilt that once haunted him had been replaced by gratitude. He wasn't the same man who once measured success in numbers. Now, he measured it in smiles. He wrote in his journal, something he hadn't done since his mother's passing. Sometimes, life breaks you not to destroy you, but to rebuild you with softer hands. The girl in the wheelchair taught me that strength isn't about walking fast. It's about standing tall after you've fallen. And maybe, the richest people in the world aren't the ones who own everything, but the ones who give without keeping count. He closed the book and placed it beside the small drawing Lily had given him. Below his apartment, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 little heartbeats. Somewhere among them, he knew there were people still crying for help, just as Lily once did. But now, there were also people who would stop. Maybe because they heard this story. Maybe because they remembered that kindness still lives in the quiet corners of humanity. He whispered into the night, "Keep shining, kiddo." A breeze swept through, rustling the pages of his open journal, as though the world itself had heard him. And for the first time in his life, Ethan didn't feel alone. He felt alive. Sometimes the stories that break us are the ones that build the bridges between hearts. If you've read this far, maybe it's because something inside you believes in the same thing Ethan did, that one act of compassion can outlive a lifetime of mistakes. So before you go, take this moment with you. Be someone's miracle today. Look up, slow down, and see who needs your hand. Because you never know whose story might begin when you choose to care.